Good morning. It'll just be a few moments. Sorry about the external noise today. Can't help that, working from home. If you have any questions, go ahead and add them to the chat, and I'll hopefully get to them if I can. Because of the external noise, we'll try to keep today's session a little bit shorter if we can, but I still have a lot to get through as far as what's happened in the last 2 weeks. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thanks for joining me again this week. Sorry for some exterior noise that you might be hearing during the meeting. Definitely there's some tree trimming happening nearby, and that can't be helped. So anyway, welcome to the end of February. This is the 50th installment of my virtual office hour address. People continue to say that they appreciate these live stream addresses and hearing from their mayor. I'll continue to do them. And it's really good because these gives me a chance to give you some updates, answer some of your questions, and provide some general words of encouragement. It is difficult. We're rapidly closing on that year since COVID-19 and the shelter in place began. But thank you for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale during ever-changing times. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. Please take care of yourself and do what you can, both physically and mentally. These are difficult times for everyone. Fatigue of staying at home, and we're continuing to see at least positive results on people's work. Keep following the county health orders. Do your part to stop the spread of the virus. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, reduce the number of people you're in contact with on a daily basis, maintain safe social distance when you're out. And of course, as always, wear your mask. It helps. And mandatory, but they're actually easing up some of those rules from a county standpoint. But as you're meeting people, remember that you could be a carrier of the virus, or someone else could be, and they could be asymptomatic, not showing any symptoms. And from that standpoint, doing whatever you can to make sure that you're not getting infected is good until we have herd immunity, which will hopefully come sooner rather than later. We've now reached 347 days since March 16th, 2020. County health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of the virus. Uh, since that first declaration, a lot has happened. A lot happens almost every day, it seems. I have, especially in the last week, lots of press conferences to watch, seminars to attend, conference calls to confer and advocate on your behalf, on the city's behalf. So let's go ahead and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. So first, last Tuesday, Governor Newsom had his press conference at a vaccination location in East LA. The governor pointed that key metrics and measures of the severity spread of the COVID-19 virus continue to trend downward. We were in double digits on the positivity rate in early to mid-January, and now they had dropped to about 4% across the state. Hospitalizations, ICU admissions are also falling, and the governor also administered, said that we now administered over 6 million vaccinations, but the supply continues to be the largest constraint. We're now vaccinating about 4 million, shooting for 4 million people a week. And then, from the number of vaccinations, we're now surpassing many of the large countries in the world. So, in California in itself could be its own country from its size, from its economy, but from that standpoint, definitely we're doing what we can to get the vaccines that we have in to people that need it. And from a trending standpoint, the governor basically laid out that most of the California counties should be out of the purple tier by the end of March, or about the middle of March. And that's been a very positive thing, that we continuing to see the new the new COVID positivity rates drop. The ICU admissions are dropping, and so all that's very positive, from a state standpoint, and we continue to get vaccines to those people that need it. The governor also, however, noted that we are seeing more variants, so definitely whether or not that will conceivably see a new surge because of a specific variant. I think we have 7 different variants going around the U.S. right now, and so it's trying to make sure that hopefully the vaccines will help mitigate all those issues. Then last Wednesday, Governor Newsom announced basically a deal had been done from the state legislature standpoint. They reached the agreement for a $9.1 billion stimulus package. And for residents, that means $600 payments to the low-income families. So there's about 5.7 million Californian households that earn less than $30,000 a year, and so that would help them. And then for businesses, it was about $2 billion in grants for businesses and nonprofits, $2 billion in tax cuts for small businesses. Fees are going to be waived for restaurants and bars, and barbershops and nail salons and such. So I think the state is trying to do what it can to boost the economy, as well as help those in need from a resident standpoint. Last Wednesday, Santa Clara County officials announced that ultimately we'd start focusing on teachers, vaccinating teachers, emergency services, food and agricultural industries, and so they will be eligible for the vaccine starting this Sunday, so February 28th, and hopefully that will, and we'll hear more from this week on what the state is trying to do to make sure that our teachers are vaccinated, that we can reopen schools hopefully in April. We'll see, some of the private schools have opened, some, it's trying to get the public schools open and create safe space for kids to go have in-person learning again. So, and from a vaccination standpoint, if you need to get vaccinated, so if you're a teacher and you want to set up an appointment, or if you're over 65, that's one of the big things right now. We're trying to get, especially if you're over 65, try to set up that appointment as quickly as possible, because once a new set of eligible people become available to get the vaccine, it'll be even harder for our seniors to get in front in the line. So if you need to get vaccinated, go to sccfreevax.org and you can sign up there. On Sunday, the United States passed 500,000 coronavirus deaths over the last year, and it's just been about a year since the COVID-19 outbreak began. So there were lots of ceremonies on Sunday and Monday, lots of things around the country to basically take a look at and give memory to all the people that we've lost because of COVID-19. Even though the U.S. represents about 5% of the world's population, our losses are about 20% of the global total. So it is a little sobering as far as the risk, as well as ultimately what we've faced as a country so far. On Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, Governor Newsom has continued his kind of vaccination press conference tour, and these press conferences are now a little bit shorter, mainly because they're replaying a lot of the same information. It's highlighting a different community around the state that they're bringing vaccinations into. That being said, a lot of it is in response to the recall campaign that it looks like will be going forward from getting enough signatures. So we'll see if all the signatures qualify, but they have until the middle of March. And from all the press that I've seen, definitely there will be a recall election happening sometime late summer, maybe fall. I know the Secretary of State was talking about conceivably pushing it till next March, but I think that's not feasible. From a timing standpoint, there is a certain expectation of when that will happen. Of course, it'll be an additional cost to the state. But from that press conferences, Newsom has basically said he's been working with the legislature to get a plan to open K through 12 schools and get in-person learning. That being said, there's been a lot of pushback, a lot of negotiations, either from the unions, from the legislature, but the governor's still confident that we can start moving our kids safely back into schools, hopefully in a short period of time. And the governor also gave details about new vaccines specifically being set aside for teachers, and that's really important. We still need to focus on equity, on getting our most at-risk people vaccinated, but in-person learning and the effects on our students and our young population is critical. So on starting March 1st, the governor basically said that 10% of doses will go to teachers on a weekly basis, and that's about 75,000 doses a week. So conceivably most teachers should be able to be vaccinated by the end of March, depending upon how quickly they're rolled out and how quickly they sign up and get those vaccinations, at least from a first dose standpoint. So that will get us closer to reopening schools, and I think that's really important. On Monday, the Santa Clara County health officials announced that they'll be updating the mandatory health order directives, and it'll mainly be matching some of the state changes that have happened. And so those, and we'll talk a little bit later about what those directives are, but basically today, Friday, February 26th, because the lower transmission rate, the county is changing its directives to better match what's happening at a state level. So allowing a wider range of social and recreational outdoor activity to resume, and most importantly, from that standpoint, our youth sports, performing arts, enrichment activities, as long as they're occurring outdoors. And this will allow youth and recreational adult sports to happen, which we've heard a lot. I've heard from a lot of people. The the different softball leagues and the baseball leagues. That they've been wanting to get kids out on the fields, and practices have been allowed. Basically. But not actual games, and so this will allow that to actually happen. So it applies to tennis, softball, baseball, water polo. So those things that are actually happening outside that are allowed under the purple tier, and we're still under the purple tier, but it's changing the county directives to match what the state is allowed. And then on Tuesday, Governor Newsom signed so ultimately the 9.1 became $7.6 billion coronavirus relief package. And so that gave $600 one-time payments to about 5.7 million people within the state. It gave $2 billion in grants to struggling small businesses. So that was a positive, negotiation that finally occurred. They finalized that, got that on the governor's desk, and they actually had a signing at one of the restaurants in Sacramento. So it was good to see that going out. Definitely for small businesses from that standpoint, whatever they can do to use those grants, and especially the residents that are in need for those funds. Hopefully those will be rolling out very quickly. And then on Tuesday evening, Sunnyvale City Council met, and that meeting went to about 1 a.m. So it's been a very busy week from a council standpoint. Started at 5 and went to 1. So it was one of our longer sessions. We started, with the study session on kind of an update on what's happening at the wastewater treatment plant, and that's ongoing construction. So that's kind of intermediate updates that we get on larger projects within the city. And then the meeting itself started with a special order of the day declaring March as Women's History Month, and we were good enough to have one of the past president from the Sunnyvale Historical Society and Museum, Heritage Park Museum, to come and speak via Zoom on some of the history of Sunnyvale and some of the basically prominent women that have really made a difference in Sunnyvale's history. And so we're declaring part of we do every month are certain special orders of the day. And so March is Women's History Month, so that was a good kickoff to that. And we also approved, from a council standpoint, we awarded the franchise for collection of solid waste, recyclables, and organic materials. So that's basically a 15-year contract, and it was to Specialty Waste, that's been a fantastic partner with the city for many years, working with and giving back to the city, giving back to Sunnyvale Community Services and other nonprofits. But that program is kind of laying out the plan for the next few years. It talks about multifamily food cycle, and a lot of this has to do with new laws at the state level, SB 1383, which covers diversion of waste from landfill and trying to get as much reclaimed, and it's also trying to make sure that food first, any food that could be distributed to people in need, gets to people in need. And then if food is bad, or if it's scraps of food from waste, food waste, then making sure that it doesn't go into landfill to basically decompose and create methane. So all of those sorts of things are part of the new SB 1383 from a state level that it was approved. There are some kind of, I'll say, some restrictive options or things that are being done on what certain containers look like and other things, and we continue to work with that and do a certain amount of advocating at a state level. We spent a lot of the meeting refining our redistricting ordinance. And if you remember, I've talked about it previously. We went through our first district elections last November. About a year ago, we defined, and we went through about a year and a half process to come up with our 6 districts. Of course, 2020, we had a census. So that census data was supposed to be here by April. It looks like it'll now be June. But we need to start defining, when we have that redistricting data, and we just found out on Tuesday night that the government is going to take even longer to get us that census data. So we have a little bit more time from a timeline standpoint, but we need to start defining what that redistricting process looks like. And so we spent a lot of time, finalizing, our previous meeting. We gave a certain amount of direction. We had a good discussion. Staff basically came up with an ordinance and brought that back to us. And then we, made some changes, made some motions as far as what those are. But ultimately, it's now a 7-member committee plus 6 alternates. So hopefully we get, 2 residents from each district that are part of this. So there'll be 7 core members, and then if a district member is missing, then one of the people from the remaining districts can join in, or one of the alternates from one of the remaining districts can join in. And so there's a lot of time spent on that wording and different sections and what the qualifications are for being on that district. So we'll have another chance about the middle of March to look at what the final language is. But I think we made a lot of progress. We spent a lot of time, and I appreciate all the letters that we received from residents, and a lot of good feedback that we received on changes they would like to see to that actual wording. We also Tuesday night authorized the city manager to enter into an agreement with our city forest for planting trees on private property. And so this is a pilot program that SUFA, the Sunnyvale Urban Forest Association, came to me about a year and a half ago, or maybe just over a year ago, to talk about the possibility of our city forest creating this program. And so what the program is, and I was happy that council approved it, but I took it to the city manager, and the city staff met with our city forest and SUFA representatives, looking at the opportunities that ultimately we would have to plant trees on private land. And the city has a program that already to replace trees in front of people's property, but that program only allows a certain amount of new trees to get planted every year. And so it's for people to request, if they had a tree that was cut down many years ago, the city, it's them requesting that they'll come out so that they're going to take care of it. Similarly, this program would say, if people would like a tree on their private property, they would say that they would pay $50, and they would also basically take an education class that they'll take care of the tree and what process they need to take care of their tree. That tree would then be planted on their property, and ultimately the city would pay the rest of the fee on that per tree basis. It's about $350 per tree, so the city would pay $300 for that education class, for the actual installation of that tree wherever that happens to be in the city, and then the resident would pay $50. So I think it's a great pilot program. As soon as that's available, I'll be publicizing it more. But I think from a creating, and trees provide so much positive things from an environmental standpoint. It's carbon sequestration from a global warming standpoint, but it's also, it's providing a habitat for wildlife. It's, creating better air. It's all those sorts of things which are really critical for what's happening. And from a dealing with heat, dealing with sun, it's really important that from that standpoint we have as many trees as we can get. So I'll be publicizing that. Hopefully that'll be done, and that program will start rolling out prior to Arbor Day, if at all possible. On Wednesday, and so that meeting continued on until about 1 a.m. I did want to mention that we did close that meeting in honor of Dick Smith, and I just wanted to mention, Dick Smith was a longtime volunteer for many different organizations. He was very active in our city. He received the Murphy Award. He received the Mayor's Award of Excellence several years ago. He was active in Sunnyvale Community Services, Rotary, Elks Club, Moose Lodge, all those, and touched a lot of lives here in Sunnyvale, and he will definitely be missed. So I was sorry to hear that he had passed. So it was good to also close that meeting in his memory on Tuesday night, or actually Wednesday morning. And then on Wednesday, California became the first state to surpass 50,000 deaths related to the coronavirus. So, our rates are going down. That being said, we've had the greatest number of deaths, and we have a very large population, but still, with that, we've had a large number of deaths related to COVID-19. On Wednesday, several cities moved from the purple tier to the red tier, so San Mateo County and Marin County, and there are also positive messages that there will be other counties moving into the red tier, most likely next week. And just to remind people what the red tier involves, it's restaurants would be able to open indoors up to 25% capacity. Retail shops and malls can then increase their indoor capacity to 50%. Museums, zoos, aquariums, and similar items can open to 25% indoor capacity. Gyms and fitness centers can be at 10% capacity indoors, and even movie theaters can open to 25% capacity. So, and I did hear from our City Line developers last week that once, or actually this week, once we move into the red tier, the AMC Theater is ready to open up again. So for those of you that didn't get a chance in the 3 weeks that it was open last year to go see a movie, that will be opening again once we move into the red tier. And then yesterday, Council had an all-day study issue and budget issue workshop. And so this is one of our 3 all-day meetings that happen every year. So we had 28 study issues to discuss and rank. The day started out with kind of an overview from a fiscal outlook of what our budget will look like for next year. And there's still a lot of questions. It definitely, things are not, bright and cheery from a budget standpoint. We do have a good amount of reserves. The costs, and we're looking at how we can save money in next year's budget. Conceivably, what's happening at a federal level might allow us to have additional funds, but we need to define our budget not based upon one-time funds that may come from the federal government. So Council was fairly ruthless. We deferred and dropped a lot of issues, and I think more than normal. Ultimately, of the 28, we ranked 13, so less than half. But there's still, after that ranking, the city manager will then go back and take a look at our list, and then talk to every department, figuring out from a staffing standpoint what can really be done in the upcoming fiscal year. So and then whether or not in the May budget workshop that we have, we'll figure out whether or not we're going to allot additional funds and staff hours, of course, but mainly additional funds from the budget to any of these 13 items. And we have a lot on our plate already, so this is one of the things that the study issue process helps us kind of look at new ideas, new policies that we might put in place, and do a real study around them before we figure out whether or not they're going to go forward. So that's, from that standpoint, it was actually a good day. It was busy. We actually finished a little bit earlier than, and so, we got through our items. I thank the council members for doing all their homework ahead of time. But from that standpoint, we will see how many study issues actually go forward at the end of the day. There are definitely some implementation, and we have a lot of big projects on our plate. I think we'll make progress this year in a lot of different areas for specific plans, whether or not that's the Lawrence Station, the El Camino, or the Moffett Park specific plan, and then lots of different smaller projects that continue to take a certain amount of our efforts. Let's see. And then on Thursday, so yesterday, the county health officials released their updated county health orders, which go into effect today. And so, but they also basically talked about that setting the stage for moving into the red tier conceivably next week. And so what they're now doing from a county standpoint is following the state guidelines for youth and adult recreation. So our own private restrictions are no longer in effect. And so from a state standpoint, outdoor baseball, softball, water polo, other, golf, other youth activities can happen with schools now, and also and the county also changed its directives as far as day camps, fitness facilities, child daycare programs and providers to just basically match what the state is doing. So there's been movement, but we're still in the purple tier, so there's still a lot of restrictions. Hopefully, things will be changing, a little bit easier, a little bit better soon. They also gave new directions as far as face coverings. So face coverings are only required outdoors if you are within 6 feet of someone who is not a member of your household. And then basically the health officer also strongly recommends, everyone maintain at least 6 foot of social distance from anyone who's not a member of their household and at any outdoor gatherings. So we'll see how quickly things open up, but this is it's easier. It makes things easier if we're just following the state recommendations on a lot of these items. Let's see. Let's go ahead and go to the health dashboard and on testing, on tracing, on hospitalizations. From a national standpoint, we're now at 28.4 million cases. That's up only about 700,000 from last week. But nationally, of course, we surpassed the 500,000 death toll. So it's been, very difficult, much like, surpassing the 50,000 death toll from a state standpoint. From a county standpoint, the number of new cases continues to trend downward. We're now over almost 110. Almost 110,000. 110,000 cases that we've had in our county. That's only up about 1,500 cases from last week, which is way down from 2,000, 3,000, 4, 7, 8,000 over the last month or so. So our case rate is dramatically dropped. That can be a mixture of things from less mingling. We've got past the holidays to vaccinations are starting to take effect. There's a lot of different things that could be a part of. And then we've had 1,765 deaths from a county standpoint. We have 205 people currently hospitalized because of COVID, and that's way down from 260 last week, 300 the week before, 400, 500. So over the last month, we've dramatically dropped to 500, 600, 5 to 600 people in the hospital because of COVID, down to about 200. So we're, a third of where we were about a month ago. And then as far as by city, San Jose still has had the most cases. They have now had 72,000 cases of COVID. That's up about 1,100 from last week, but that's way down from 3,000, 5,000 that they were having on a weekly basis just about a month ago. In Sunnyvale, we've now seen 5,082 cases of COVID. That's only up less than 70 people from 70 new cases from a week ago. So things are moving, very well, and it's been very positive from that standpoint. I continue to do a lot of advocating on your behalf. At a federal level, there's been, Congress has made continues to finalize what the stimulus package looks like. But there's still questions about whether or not that emergency funding will will actually help out our city directly. So, and this was the issue with the same package that was approved last May. That funding really should be fair and appropriate for each and every local government, with no minimum population threshold that they ended up with in the May directive. These funds need to be directly allocated to our local governments, which I think is critical, because you don't want that entanglement of the state and local funding, and the city's requesting money from the state and only adding an extra layer, an extra barrier for how we get those funds. So ultimately, I'm hoping that advocacy is working. I've been talking to our congressmen and writing letters to our senators. Hopefully, they can make a difference, and ultimately what gets approved will get us actual funding. And then at the county level, I continue to have the discussions with county health and our county supervisors. From a testing standpoint, the pop-up van was here last Monday at Murphy Park. So they're here on the second and fourth Mondays of every month. So they'll be back on March 8th and March 22nd. So they're there from 9:30 to 4. And then El Camino Health is also having another testing site, or another testing day at Murphy Park on Monday, March 1st. So those appointments are required for both of those. And so you can go for the county testing to sccfreetest.org, and you can get your appointment there. You can also go directly to the El Camino Health site, and I published a post about that earlier this week if you want to get tested on Monday. So they'll be here Monday, March 1st between 8:30 a.m. and 4:20 p.m. So thanks for El Camino Health District for providing that testing. Let's go ahead and get to some upcoming announcements. And I think the only big thing which I've been mentioning is next Tuesday, March 2nd, starting at 4 p.m. is our next Moffett Park Specific Plan Outreach meeting. And so this is on the market condition, the land use condition, housing, and open space. So if you want to find out more, you can go to moffatparksp.com and see basically links to the past presentations and video, and then of course get more information on what we're going to be talking about on Monday, how to register to either send emails or register to give public comment, ask questions during the meeting. So I think that's been very useful. So it's starting at 4 p.m. It's basically about an hour presentation, an hour of answering questions, getting feedback from residents, and then an hour of council giving directions to city staff on what they would like to see when this keeps moving forward, or what they think is missing from the presentation, or additional questions that they'd like to have answered. Let's go ahead and get to the weekly questions. So Sandy asked, is it true that the city doesn't issue permits for park facility use. So under COVID, this was one of the things that was being suggested from a county standpoint. Field rentals are still available, especially now that outdoor sports can happen. So we were still allowing field rentals. However, picnic areas and basketball courts were closed for permitting. So you couldn't reserve a picnic area because ultimately that was considered to be a large gathering and only encouraging, let's say, people breaking their bubbles. I'm assuming so those permits weren't issued, but as we continue to move forward, as we continue to open up, that will be changing. So we'll see how quickly we get to that from that standpoint. Maribel asked, does the new education vaccination announcement apply to nannies? As far as I've been able to understand, yes, that does. The county hasn't been able, they're in the process of changing the rules, so they're trying to get that clarification. But hopefully, from a health order standpoint, that becomes clear. Brooke asked, will a mass vaccination site open up in Santa Clara County, and will there be one in our city? I've had lots of people ask about that. So there should be an announcement sometime in the next week or so for a wider vaccination site to open within our city. Right now, Columbia Neighborhood Center is vaccinating people, and you can go through the Mayview Health Center to sign up for those vaccinations. But we're trying to get. I've been working with several of our high-tech companies to get larger vaccination sites done as much as possible. And then people ask, what happened with Dunkin' Donuts opening? So it was supposed to open last weekend, as I was saying. They did have some delays in some shipments. So I got an update, I think midweek, that they should be opening this weekend. I don't think they've had all their shipments, so keep your fingers crossed. I've been, texting with the owner, and hopefully that will be opening this weekend. For those of you that are looking forward to the indulgement of some donuts, hopefully that'll happen. And several people ask what's happening with Fair Oaks Park and the unhoused there. And so the good thing is, on Tuesday night's meeting, we've been in negotiation. Well, we've been working with the county for months to try to see if we could find, for supportive services, housing for the unhoused at Fair Oaks Park. We're currently working on those renovations. The biggest issue is the parking lot where most of those unhoused at Fair Oaks have been stationed. That area is right next to where the PG&E basically power lines are. There's a lot of infrastructure work for the park that can't go on until that parking lot's closed and completely ripped up. And so that affects kind of the ongoing timing. So what we've done is finalize the contracts, because the county couldn't do it. We finalized the contracts with several service providers to basically provide, hotels, provide storage for the processing and storage of their items, make sure that the food is being provided, working with the county to make sure that food and a certain amount of health services can be provided. So it's been a big effort, but the city manager was finally able to release it that those contracts have been signed, and hopefully that will be moving forward sometime in the next week or so. Let's see, other questions. Let's see. Yes, I got Minkun's questions about Dunkin' Donuts. Yes, hopefully this weekend. What's the best way to reconnect with people remotely in Sunnyvale? Arushia asked, what's the best way to connect to people remotely in Sunnyvale? I'm not really sure, and this is kind of an ongoing question of because you kind of haven't had, and a lot of people that you used to see at a coffee shop or at the restaurant or randomly around the city, you've kind of lost those connections over over the last almost 12 months now. And so, that whole reconnection is going to take a while. Definitely, I think just being out and wearing your mask but being safe will be good. I think, as we open up more things, whether or not that's youth sports and parents seeing other parents and kids being able to be out on the fields, exercising, actually having a baseball game. I think all that will help. The Zoom concept, the video conferencing only does so much. And there are a lot of people that you see on a daily basis that you don't have those connections with. So I think, as we get closer to summer, I think that's the best thing, is just being out in your neighborhoods, being safe, wearing your mask, and that to me is always a big thing, and that's I think one of the reasons why people, have appreciated these live stream meetings, is it's a connection with the mayor, it's a connection with other people. There's a whole, group of people that from the mayor's restaurant reviews that are following the mayor's footsteps, talking to the owners of restaurants when you're going in, the workers when you're going in. It's creating a community that conceivably wasn't there before. But yeah, I know it's been difficult, and how you reconnect with people is something that really, we need to work on. And I think people will definitely, past COVID, appreciate that a lot more. Let's go ahead and wrap up. I know that hopefully you've been able to hear me today, and the noise outside hasn't been too bad. From where we stand, things continue to be difficult, but let's go ahead. I just want to thank you for joining me again this week, as you do, or as many of you do every week, whether or not it's live or watching it later. As always, I'm just proud of Sunnyvale's response to the pandemic. Life is difficult, and it will be a while before we get back to normal, but things are looking better. New issues come up, but your actions, your response make a difference. The dropping of the number of new positive cases, the less people in the hospital because of COVID, all those are important. Continue to wear your mask. It makes a difference. Continue to build community if you can, especially during these times. I'm really proud how Sunnyvale residents have pulled together to help those in need, to give away, fruit from their tree or baked goods. It's trying to build that community as much as possible. If you're out on a walk, wave, say hello from a safe social distance. People miss that interaction. Reconnect as much as you can, especially as things are starting to look better, as people get vaccinated. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together. We will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Until next week, wear your mask, take care, stay safe. Have a good week. See you. Bye.